You walk onto the lot, you spot the truck you want, then you see the sticker, and your stomach drops. $60,000, maybe 70. I stood in that exact spot a while back, staring at a half-ton pickup that cost more than my first house down payment, and the salesman just smiled and said, "We can stretch the loan to 84 months. Here is what I figured out, and it changed how I look at every vehicle I own. The new truck market is not slowing down. It is cracking apart, and the people quietly winning right now are not the ones buying new. They're the ones keeping old trucks alive for a few $100s a year, using methods that were common knowledge 2 generations ago and got buried under a wall of marketing. I did not believe it at first. I thought a truck with 200,000 miles was junk. I was wrong. And by the end of this, I am going to hand you 2 small words printed in the back of thousands of owner's manuals since the late 1990s, words that quietly cost regular people billions in dead engines and blown transmissions. It is simple. You can check it this weekend in your own driveway with what you already own. Stay with me, because the last part is the part almost nobody knows. Let me start where the pain is, because I felt it myself. When I went shopping, I assumed prices had gone up a little. A little. That is a joke. According to Kelley Blue Book, the average price of a new vehicle in the United States has been sitting near $48,000. And trucks? Trucks run higher than that average. A loaded full-size pickup crossing $70,000 or even $80,000 is no longer some rare unicorn. It is Tuesday. So I did what most people do. I looked at the monthly payment instead of the price, because that is the trap they set for you. And the monthly payment only looks survivable because the loan was stretched out longer than I have owned some homes. Here is the number that stopped me cold. Experian, the credit reporting company, has reported that a large share of new car loans now run 72 months or longer, and a growing slice run a full 84 months. That is 7 years. 7 years of payments on a machine that starts losing value the second you drive it off the lot. I sat in that finance office and did the math on a napkin, and I realized I would be making truck payments until my youngest was almost done with school. But it gets worse, and this is the part that really opened my eyes. Because so many people rolled the leftover balance from their last vehicle into the new loan, a lot of buyers now owe more than the truck is worth the day they sign. Edmunds, the car research company, has reported that the average amount owed on trade-ins with negative equity climbed past $6,000. Think about that. People are walking in already $6,000 in the hole and stacking a $70,000 truck on top of it. That is not a healthy market. That is a bubble. And bubbles do one thing. They pop. You can already see the cracks. Repossessions have been climbing. Dealer lots have been filling back up. And regular families are quietly deciding they simply cannot do it anymore. That is the crash the headline is talking about. Not a crash in what trucks cost. A crash in who can actually pay for them. And when the buyers disappear, the whole thing starts to come down. So I asked myself a very old-fashioned question. If I cannot afford a new one, and I refuse to sign my life away for 7 years, what did people do before all of this? Because folks drove trucks for decades before 84-month loans existed. How did they keep them running? Therefore, I started digging into the trucks themselves, the older ones, and what I found genuinely surprised me. Here is the setup, and I want you to sit with it. A truck built in the late 1980s or the early 1990s, a plain work truck with a simple engine, will very often outlast a brand new one. Not in comfort, not in gadgets. In sheer years of running. That sounds backwards. New should be better, right? But let me give you the history, because the history explains everything. Go back to the 1960s and 70s. A pickup truck was a tool. It was sold to farmers, ranchers, tradesmen, and men who fixed their own equipment on a Sunday afternoon. The engines were built with thick iron blocks. The parts were meant to be unbolted, cleaned, and put back on. There was room under the hood to stand a coffee cup on the engine and still reach every bolt with your hand, and there is a real reason those trucks were built that way. In that era, a truck was expected to be rebuilt, not replaced. A mechanic, or the owner himself, would pull an engine at 150,000 miles, hone the cylinders, drop in new rings and bearings, and put another 150,000 miles on it. Rebuilding was normal. It was expected. The whole machine was designed around the idea that a human being with ordinary tools would open it up and fix it. I tested this belief on an old truck a neighbor of mine had parked in a field. Everybody said it was done. Dead. Not worth the effort. It had been sitting for 3 years. I put in a fresh battery, drained the old fuel, changed the oil in the filter, cleaned the connections, and put a little fresh gas in it. That engine turned over and ran like it had been waiting for someone to just pay attention to it. I stood there in that field grinning like a kid. A machine everyone called worthless started on the 4th crank. That is when it clicked for me. The trucks did not get worse at lasting. We got worse at keeping them. And somewhere along the line, the knowledge of how to keep a vehicle alive quietly slipped out of ordinary hands. But how bad is that gap really? Here is a number that proves it is not just nostalgia. S&P Global Mobility, a firm that tracks every vehicle on American roads, reported that the average age of cars and trucks in the United States climbed to about 12.5 years, the highest it has ever been. Read that again. The average vehicle on the road right now is older than it has ever been in the history of the country. Why? Partly because new ones cost a fortune, but partly because the people who figured out how to maintain what they already own are refusing to let go. They are keeping trucks running to 200, 250, even 300,000 miles, and they are doing it for pocket change compared to a $70,000 loan. So the real question became the one that mattered to me and matters to you. What exactly are those people doing? Because if a truck can run 300,000 miles, there has to be a short list of things that actually make the difference, and there is. I found it. It is shorter than you think, and most of it costs less than a single truck payment. Now, before I give you that list, I want to talk directly to somebody. Maybe you are sitting there thinking this is fine for a man with a big garage, a lift, a full set of tools, and a whole weekend to burn. That is not me. I rent, I park on the street. I have never rebuilt an engine in my life, and I never will. Good, because this next part is built exactly for you. Everything I am about to give you can be done in a parking spot, in a driveway, in an apartment lot, with things you either already own or can buy for the price of lunch. No lift, no expert, no garage. I promise you that. Here is the first one, and it is the cheapest, most powerful thing you can do, and almost nobody does it right. Fluids. The lifeblood of any engine is not the fuel. It is the oil and the other fluids that keep metal from grinding metal into dust. When I actually started paying attention, I realized I had been treating oil changes like a chore to put off, when they are the single reason an engine dies young or lives long. You do not need a shop for the basics of watching your fluids. Pop the hood, pull the oil dipstick, wipe it, push it back, pull it again, and look at two things, the level and the color. Clean oil is honey-colored. Oil that looks like black coffee and smells burnt is oil that has stopped protecting your engine. That one habit, done every couple of weeks, tells you more about your truck's future than any dashboard light. And it costs nothing but 2 minutes. Here is the second one you can do anywhere. Your cooling system. Overheating kills more engines than hard driving ever will. You do not need tools. When the engine is stone cold, never hot, look at the coolant reservoir. It has a low line and a full line printed right on the plastic. Keep it between them. Look under the truck in the morning for puddles. A small leak caught early is a $10 hose. A leak ignored is a warped cylinder head and a dead engine. I learned that the expensive way on a car years ago, and I will never ignore a puddle again. Third, and this one shocked me with how much it did, tires and pressure. Find the sticker inside your driver's door. It tells you the exact pressure your truck wants. Buy a $2 pressure gauge, check them cold, and keep them right. Underinflated tires, drag, waste fuel, wear out early, and make your engine work harder for every single mile. I gained noticeable fuel mileage back just by keeping 4 tires at the right number. That is money in your pocket every week, and it took me 5 minutes in a parking lot. That is the real question that started pulling at me, and it led me somewhere I did not expect. When I went looking for that short list, I kept running into the same ideas buried in old manuals, old shop notes, and conversations with mechanics who had been doing this work for 40 years. Eventually, I pulled everything I had found together and turned it into a book. It is called First Fixes, and it is part of a series that includes Deep Habits and System Complete. The whole thing is written for people who park on the street, have never touched a wrench in their life, and simply want to stop bleeding money into trucks they do not understand. If that sounds like you, the details are in the description below. It changed how I look at everything under my hood, and I think it will do the same for you. Now, back to that short list of things that actually keep a truck alive, because this is where it gets practical. And here is a fourth one that costs nothing at all. Warm it and treat it gently for the first minute. When you start a cold engine, the oil is sitting down in the pan. It takes a few seconds to climb up and coat everything. Most engine wear in the whole life of a truck happens in those first cold seconds. So I stopped starting my truck and immediately mashing the gas. I let it settle for a moment, then I drive gently until the temperature needle lifts off cold. Free. None of that needs a garage. None of it needs an expert. And every bit of it separates a truck that dies at 120,000 miles from one that runs past 250. So if it is that simple and that cheap, why does almost nobody do it? Why did this basic knowledge, the kind my grandfather just knew, slip out of our hands? Therefore, we have to talk about how it happened, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. For most of the last century, the owner's manual that came with your vehicle was a real maintenance guide. It told you to grease fittings, change fluids on a tight schedule, and inspect your own parts. People followed it because they had to. There were no dealerships offering to do it for you on every corner, and money was tight, so folks did it themselves. But somewhere in the last few decades, the whole message flipped. Vehicles stopped being sold as tools you maintain. They started being sold as appliances you use and then trade in. The marketing changed. Suddenly the goal was not to keep your truck for 20 years. The goal was to get you into a new one every 3 to 5 on a fresh loan over and over for the rest of your driving life. And the machines themselves changed to match. Engines got crammed into tight bays where you cannot reach a spark plug without pulling half the truck apart. Simple mechanical parts got replaced with sealed modules that a regular person cannot open. More and more repairs started requiring a computer that only the dealer has. Little by little, the truck was designed to push you away from your own engine and toward a service counter. I am not telling you every change was a conspiracy. Some of it made vehicles cleaner and safer, and that is real. But the effect on your wallet was enormous, and it was not an accident. Every time maintenance moved from your driveway to their service bay, somebody made money, and it was not you. And here is where it gets personal, because it leads straight to the secret I promised you at the start. There is one specific decision, made by manufacturers, that has quietly destroyed more transmissions and cost more regular families thousands of unexpected dollars than almost anything else. And it hides behind two innocent little words: lifetime fluid. Let me explain, because this is the finale, and it is the thing I wish someone had told me 20 years ago. Starting broadly in the late 1990s and rolling through the 2000s, more and more manufacturers began labeling the automatic transmission fluid in their vehicles as filled for life. Lifetime fluid. No service required. It was printed right there in the maintenance sections of the owner's manuals, and it was repeated by service writers everywhere. Now, when you and I hear the word lifetime, we picture a very long time. We picture the life of the truck. 200,000 miles, maybe more. That is what a normal person assumes those words mean, but that is not what they mean at all. Talk to any transmission specialist who has been under vehicles for 30 years, and they will tell you the same thing I found when I went digging. Automatic transmission fluid is not magic. It is oil, and oil breaks down with heat. A transmission runs hot, and over tens of thousands of miles that fluid burns, darkens, loses its ability to protect the gears and clutches, and fills up with tiny metal particles worn off the parts inside. Old, cooked fluid does not protect. It grinds. So what does lifetime really mean in practice? Here is the quiet truth. It was widely understood in the industry that this was engineered to get the transmission comfortably past the warranty period, past it. After that, if the transmission failed at 140,000 miles because the fluid had been slowly cooking for a decade, well, that was long past the warranty. And a failed transmission is one of the most expensive repairs there is. A replacement can run $3,000, $4,000, even $5,000. For a lot of people, that single repair is the moment they give up on a good truck and go sign a $70,000 loan they cannot afford, and the cycle starts all over again. Do you see it now? 2 words in a manual: lifetime fluid, and they push millions of people out of trucks that had another 100,000 miles left in them. Here is the secret, and it is almost insultingly simple. That fluid is not lifetime. Change it. Change your automatic transmission fluid on a real schedule, and you protect the single most expensive part of your truck for the price of a nice dinner. Talk to the old school mechanics and the maintenance guides from before the lifetime marketing took over, and they land in the same range. Service that fluid somewhere around every 30 to 60,000 miles, and you dramatically extend the life of the transmission. The people running trucks to 300,000 miles are almost all doing this one thing that the modern manual quietly told them not to bother with. And this is not something you even need to do yourself if you do not want to. This is the beautiful part. You do not need a lift or special skills. You can ask any independent shop for a transmission fluid service, and it is one of the cheaper things they do. Or, on many trucks, a handy person can drop the pan and change it in a driveway with basic tools. Either way, the cost is nothing next to a new transmission, and it is a rounding error next to a new truck. I resisted this. I will be honest. My truck's manual said lifetime, and I thought, the engineers know better than me, so I did nothing. Then I met an old transmission man who had been rebuilding these units since the 1970s, and he laughed at that word. He told me he had made a very good living off the word lifetime, because it meant a steady stream of dead transmissions rolling through his door, all from people who trusted a manual that was written to sell the next truck, not to save the one you own. That conversation cost me a cup of coffee. It probably saved me thousands. So here is where the whole thing comes together. The knowledge of how to keep a truck alive for decades did not vanish because it stopped working. It works better than ever. It got pushed aside because there is no profit in you keeping a truck for 20 years. The manuals got quieter about maintenance. The word lifetime got printed where a real service interval used to be. And the men who knew the truth, the old mechanics and the tradesmen and the farmers, got older, and fewer people sat still long enough to learn what they knew, but it was never lost. It was just waiting in a field, like that truck my neighbor gave up on, waiting for somebody to pay attention and turn the key, and now you have it. Think about what that means against the backdrop of this crash. While dealers are stuck with unsold trucks, while families are drowning in 84-month loans and $6,000 of negative equity, you can take the truck you already own, or a solid used one that somebody else gave up on, and keep it running strong for years for a few $100s a year. Watch your oil, watch your coolant, keep your tires right, warm it gently, and change the fluid they told you never to change. That is it. That is the whole secret that a whole industry spent decades hoping you would forget. I want you to remember the feeling you had at the start, staring at that sticker with your stomach dropping. That feeling was never really about the truck. It was about being backed into a corner, told your only choice was to sign away 7 years of your money for something you cannot fix and were never meant to keep. What you actually recovered today is the thing they quietly took from you, the ability to say no, the ability to keep what is yours and make it last. You are the kind of person who does not believe a machine is trash just because a manual tells you so. You are the kind of person who suspects that when something useful disappears from common knowledge, somebody profited from the forgetting. And you are right, that instinct is worth more than any new truck on any lot. So let me ask you something specific, and I really want your answer. What is the highest mileage you have ever personally put on a single vehicle, and what finally killed it? Was it the engine, the transmission, or did you just get talked into trading it in? Tell me down in the comments, and tell me where you are watching from, because I read these and I learn as much from you as you learn from me. If this hit home, come stand with the rest of us who are quietly recovering this kind of knowledge, one buried method at a time, and keeping our money in our own pockets. Because next time, I am going to show you the truth about the word premium on the fuel pump and the simple test that tells you in one tank whether your truck actually needs it or whether you have been pouring extra dollars down the hole for nothing. You are not going to believe how many people are paying for a benefit their engine cannot even use. I ran the test myself, and the numbers surprised me. Do not miss it. I stood on that lot too, and here's what I couldn't fit into this video. Right where I stopped, I keep going inside the Old Ways Society. In there you can ask me your own truck questions, and a real person me answers you myself. You're not doing this alone. Just point your phone camera at the code on the screen, and you can cancel any time with one click.